Theological pipe.
I've been expecting you.
Bingo! Yahtzee!
There is a God, and
I speak jive.
I'm not him.
You know, living with you, it hasn't been easy. People see me, but they think of you. Now with all this going on, this is gonna be worse than ever.
It don't have to be.
No, sure it does.
Why? You got a lot going on, kid.
Well, my last name? That's the reason I got a decent job. That's the reason why people deal with me in the first place. Now I start to get a little ahead. I start to get a little something for myself, and this happens. Now I'm asking you as a favor not to go through with this, okay? This is only gonna end up bad for you, and it's gonna end up bad for me.
You think I'm hurting you?
Yeah, in a way you are.
It's the last thing I ever wanted to do.
I know that's not what you want to do, but that's just the way that it is. Don't you care what people think? Doesn't it bother you that people are making you out to be a joke and that I'm gonna be included in that? Do you think that's right? Do you?
You ain't gonna believe this, but you used to fit right here. I'd hold you up and say to your mother, this kid's gonna be the best kid in the world. This kid's gonna be somebody better than anybody ever knew. And you grew up good and wonderful. It was great just watching you every day. It was like a privilege. Then the time come for you to be your own man and take on the world, and you did. But somewhere along the line, you changed. You stopped being you. You let people stick a finger in your face and tell you you're no good. And when things got hard, you started looking for something to blame, like a big shadow. Let me tell you something you already know. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, or nobody is gonna hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. Now, if you know what you're worth, now go out and get what you're worth. But you gotta be willing to take the hits and not pointing fingers saying you ain't where you wanna be because of him or her or anybody. Cowards do that, and that ain't you. You're better than that. I'm always gonna love you no matter what. No matter what happens. You're my son, you're my blood. You're the best thing in my life. But until you start believing in yourself, you ain't gonna have a life. Don't forget to visit your mother.
Which shadow do you blame? In that speech by Rocky Balboa, one of the greatest speeches in cinematic history, he talks about this big shadow. He was talking to his son, and his son was complaining about his life. And if you've watched the movie, he complained about his life. He complained about living in Rocky's shadow. He complained about, his job and where he was and all that stuff. And Rocky there says, you try to blame a shadow. You point fingers at people saying, I'm not where I want to be because of a shadow, because of some mystery thing that is preventing you from being who you want to be. And I think that's a problem in society today. We have such a victim mentality, a victimhood culture that's going on, that everyone uses some shadow or some group or some person or some group of people to blame for them not attaining the status that they think that they should attain. And it's just something that I've been thinking about. I've been trying to kind of formulate an opinion on this of why victimhood is so popular these days. And not for everybody. I think most people don't want to be a victim. One of the lines from a movie that's a cheesy movie, but Dangerous Minds, Michelle Pfeiffer was a teacher in a movie. This was like, I think, in the 90s when the movie came out. And she's talking to these kids in these classrooms and these poor, disadvantaged students. And she sits there and says, there's no victims in this classroom. And could you imagine if that movie was made today? It would be the exact opposite. Hollywood would say, there's nothing but victims in this classroom because of your race, because of your gender, and because of your sexuality, and because of this, and because of that, and because of whatever characteristics you want to fit in. That's the reason, and you're a victim, and there it is. So you're not where you want to be because of somebody else. And I think that victimhood mentality, I think there's some sort of, I don't even know if it's psychological or physiological. There's a really good speech, and this is going to kind of meander all over the place as I talk about it, because I love the Rocky Balboa speech, because he's telling his son, listen, you're responsible for your actions, and stop blaming other people if you're not where you want to be. Maybe look in the mirror first. Not to say that there aren't other forces out there. He even says in the speech that life is mean and nasty, and it's going to knock you down. And it knocks you down regardless of your color, regardless of your race, regardless of your upbringing, regardless of who you are. Life is tough. And he's telling his son in that speech, man, pick yourself up and start fighting back. And you're not fighting against some unseen force or some group that's trying to oppress you. You're fighting against yourself. Stop blaming other people. Look in the mirror and start fighting back regardless of how hard it is. And what I was thinking of, there's a speech. I think the guy's like a motivational speaker or just some guy on the speaker circuit. He's done some TED Talks and stuff. His name, I think his first name is Martin, but Simon. His first name is Simon. Simon Sinek. And he does this talk when he's talking about kids today or millennials today. And he's talking about cell phones. And social media and how they become addicted or become addicting. And the reason that they're addictive is because you want to have that buzz. You want to have somebody ping your Instagram post with a thumbs up or a like or a heart. You want someone to respond. You want, people to give you stars. You want people to respond. Even text messages. You send out a bunch of text messages, he said, hoping that someone's going to respond to you, because he said that science has proved that there's a dopamine response that goes on in your brain when that happens, when someone responds to you. There's a response in your body that feels good. He says it's the same response that happens when you gamble, when you drink, when you do those kind of things. It's the same response that the body happens when you get some sort of response from a social media post or from a text message. And I was trying to think about, okay, why is a social media response the same sort of reaction that happens when you're drinking or when you're gambling? And I don't know that this is true, but I kind of suspect that it's possible that it's not so much the activity, but what surrounds the activity. And again, could be totally off base here. I have nothing to base this on except speculation. I'm just thinking out loud. When you're gambling, you are around other people usually, and it's exciting, and there's people talking, and there's people shouting, and there's lights and buzzing going on, and it's just fun to be around other people who are doing the same thing, and it's really, really a cool thing to do, and people really, really like it. So there's like a community out there. You gamble as a community. There's people around, there's connection, and I think human beings are social creatures. We need to be around other people. It's something that we have to do, which is why, if you look at the past year, the cases of depression and suicides and overdoses have skyrocketed because we've been locked down for COVID. We are a social creature. We need to be around other people. And even though social media helps, a ding on a phone is not the same as someone giving you a hug, right? So I think that gambling, there's a social aspect to it. Same thing with drinking. I would imagine the dopamine hit that you get from drinking that he talked about in that video is not when you're home alone drinking and you're depressed. And I don't think it's a symptom of the chemicals in the alcohol affecting you. I think it's because when you normally drink, you're around friends, you're drinking beers, you're watching sports. Again, there's a community. And I'm going to guess that part of the reason that we suffer from a victimhood culture is because the second you say that you're a victim, you are automatically surrounded by this huge apparatus that wants to be a part of your life, right? So you play the victim, there's other people who play the victim, and there's people feeding into that, and it's part of that community need that we have, that we need to be part of a community. And I think that for some people, they have such a need for community that they're willing to pretend or maybe even truly believe that they're a victim just so they can have other people around them who play the victim. You know the saying, there's misery loves company, right? Misery loves company. So if you're a victim and I'm a victim and we're all victims, we can hang out as victims and be victims. And I think it does a disservice to true victims. There are really true victims out there, but I think some people play into that victimhood culture and will pretend that they're not where they are because of, again, that big shadow. And you label the shadow anything that you want to. I'm not going to get into specifics because I don't think it's important. I think it's just something to think about, that it's almost like it's better to be part of some collective victimhood than it is to be an individual trying to fight for what you're worth, right? And I was thinking about this, like, I think there's two types of ways to think about living in the United States of America or our structure of our culture. You're either an individual, which is part of a culture, right? So culture is made up of a bunch of individuals who are part of a culture, or you're a culture that's made up of individuals. And there is a difference there to me, because if you take the culture route, so we're a culture that's made up of people, well, the culture's more important. The identity of that group is more important than who you are personally, right? Or you're an individual who makes up a culture, which I think is what this country, if you read the Founding Fathers, if you read the documents, if you read the books, if you read things that happened when this country started and the way this country was founded, it was made up of a bunch of individuals coming together to live, hopefully in harmony. Now we're struggling with that right now in a lot of senses, and we need to fix that. And I think that part of that is feeding into the change from we're a bunch of individuals with our own thoughts, our own desires, our own needs, our own wants, our own dreams, our own hopes. Let me live my life, you live your life, and we're together in this. And we're in this together as a country, or we're a country, and now you need to meld yourself into what the country is. And what's more important is the identity in a larger group than your own personal identity. And I think it's an interesting thing to think about. I don't have an answer. I probably have a preference. I again, I've always said that I'm a proponent of Henry David Thoreau, that the government is best which governs least. Leave the lower the taxes, the better. The less intrusive the government is in all of our lives, the better. Go out, be nice, live friendly. As a Christian, treat people with love and respect and kindness, and be willing to die for them. Think of others more highly than yourself. I think if we do that as individuals, the country's going to be great. Now, unfortunately, we don't do that anymore. We don't even have that common idea of let's look out for each other. Now we have, I'm going to look out for me, and that's all that matters. And that's not, even if you read the Founding Fathers documents, they said that this country was, and the Constitution and the form of government we have was meant for a moral people. Virtue and living virtuous was a huge part of, George Washington, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, all of their principles that they lived by was virtue. Now, did they have some issues? Of course they did, but they lived in a different time. But if you take away that virtue, if you take away being nice and being friendly and looking out for people, and again, virtues that are found in the Bible, helping the poor, helping those in need, feeding the hungry, clothing the people that are naked, if you take that away, it's really hard to live in a country like this. And here's the thing, I have no point to this episode. I was just thinking about the shadow and the victimhood mentality, and how I think it's an addictive thing, because you become part of a community and it feeds into that need for community. And how much better would it be if we fed into the fact that, you're an individual, and you're made in the image of God, and God is, you're created in His image, and you aren't a victim. You are a child of God, and you have special gifts and talents that He's given you to use for His glory, and how amazing that would be. So maybe that's sort of where this will end up when I say put that in your theological pipe and smoke it, is to start thinking of, would you rather be part of a culture that is made up of individuals and the culture is more important? Or would you rather be a group of individuals and you have your own individual ideas and attitudes and dreams and desires, and you're part of a culture that supports that and supports each other? And again, that'd be a fascinating debate and something that smarter people can debate. But I just think that in terms of being a Christian and believing in a higher power, God created you to be you. You are unique. You are an individual. You know, the Bible says in Psalms that God knit you together in the womb. He knew the color of your eyes. He knew the color of your hair or lack thereof. He knew how tall you were going to be. He knew your body type. He knew who your parents were going to be. He knew, what your likes and dislikes were going to be. And he did that for a purpose. And the purpose is for you to go out and to bring glory to him as an individual. And then to be, even if you look at Jesus, when he talked about the body, we're all part of the body of Christ, which someone could then argue, well, isn't that part, doesn't the collective take over the individual there? Yes, but he said in one of his things when he was talking about we're all members of the same body, but we all have unique roles to play in that body. There's eyes and there's feet and there's hands and there's fingers and there's toes and there's legs and there's hearts and there's lungs and there's all those things. So we all have a part, and the individual part is important in the full part as opposed to the full part being more important than the individual part, I guess. So maybe just something to think about. So putting things in your theological pipe, the idea of that is to just think about it. And I think this is something I need to think about more. So I'll post this, even though it's probably going to leave you with more questions than answers. And I don't think I ever come up with real answers. I even had a podcast that said sometimes saying I don't know is a good thing. So I'm not sure I have an answer for this, but I think that it's just something to think about. And I do think that victimhood, culture needs to go away. We need to stop glorifying it. We need to stop making people victims and making them overcomers. I think that's more important too. You're an overcomer. You can overcome whatever obstacle is in front of you. You can overcome it. It's been done countless times, and in this country especially, this is the if you want an opportunity to overcome obstacles, to overcome who you are and overcome anything in life, the United States is really the greatest country in the world to do that in. So a little perspective is good too. So I'll just end there. Put that in your theological pipe and smoke it. Be nice as always, and we'll see you next time.
Well, bye.